Okay, close your eyes for a second. I want you to picture the single most majestic dinosaur you can think of. You're probably imagining that one scene, from 1993. The paleontologists are just stunned that John Williams' score swells.
The Jeep stops.
The Jeep stops, and there it is, this towering, gentle giant rearing up to get the highest leaves, and then it comes down with this ground-shaking thud.
It's probably the most recognizable dinosaur silhouette in movie history, the Brachiosaurus. It was the first fully computer-generated dinosaur most of us ever saw. It's like the ambassador of the Jurassic.
It is. It's the pop culture icon. But, and this is where I might have to ruin your childhood just a little bit.
Uh-oh.
What if I told you that the dinosaur you're picturing, the one in the movie, the one in that famous Berlin museum, the one on all the lunchboxes, isn't actually Brachiosaurus?
That is the big twist.
Yeah.
The animal that everyone pictures is almost certainly Giraffatitan, which is an African cousin. The true Brachiosaurus, Brachiosaurus altithorax, is this rare North American animal that honestly looked pretty different.
So it's a total imposter situation.
Yeah.
We've been cheering for the wrong dinosaur for, 30 years?
Pretty much.
So today, on this deep dive, we're going to set the record straight. We are going to find the real arm lizard.
And in doing that, we're going to uncover just this masterpiece of biological engineering. I mean, we're talking about an animal that defied gravity with its blood pressure, had a respiratory system more like a bird's than a reptile's.
Wow.
And grew from a tiny 2-meter-long baby into a 40-ton titan.
Let's unpack this whole case of mistaken identity. But first, we have to go back to where it all started. Not on some island off Costa Rica, but in the Colorado River Valley, right around the turn of the 20th century.
The year is 1900. Paleontologist Elmer S. and his crew, they're out from the Field Columbian Museum, what we now call the Field Museum in Chicago.
Wait.
And they're prospecting near Grand Junction, Colorado. And the funny thing is, they weren't even looking for dinosaurs. They were hoping to find Eocene mammals, like prehistoric horses.
That is classic scientific serendipity. You go out looking for a little horse, you find a monster.
Exactly. So Riggs' assistant, a guy named Harold Menke, he's out walking and he stumbles on a bone. But not just any bone. It's the upper arm bone, the humerus, and it is just absurdly large.
How large are we talking?
We're talking over 2 meters long. That's about 6.5 feet.
Just the upper arm bone. That's taller than me.
Taller than the average person. And this leads to my favorite little story from the original material. Riggs sees this bone, and he's totally baffled. He actually thinks it's a femur, a thigh bone that's just been, squashed and deformed over time.
Well, that's an understandable mistake, right? I mean, for other big sauropods like Diplodocus, the back legs were the huge ones.
They're the powerhouses. The front legs were always shorter.
Yeah.
Those animals were built like suspension bridges, sloping down towards the head. Finding an arm bone that was bigger than a thigh bone, it was unheard of.
It just broke all the rules of dinosaur architecture.
It completely broke the mold. Riggs eventually figured it out, and he famously declared he'd found the largest land animal ever. And that weird proportion, that's what gives us the name, Brachiosaurus.
It means.
It comes from the Greek. Brachion means arm, and sauros means lizard. So arm lizard.
Arm lizard. Makes sense.
And the specific name, altithorax, is from Latin and Greek, meaning deep chest.
Which also fits. If your front legs are longer than your back legs, your whole body angles up. You don't look like that suspension bridge anymore. You look more like a giraffe.
Precisely. That deep chest and those long arms gave it this steeply inclined trunk. It was a completely radical body plan. But this is where the confusion starts.
Okay.
Riggs finds this thing in 1900. It's huge, but it's not complete. They only have about 20% of the skeleton.
So Chicago's got this fragmentary giant. They know it's a big deal, but they don't have the whole picture. But then, a few years later, German expeditions head to Tanzania.
Right, to what was then German East Africa.
Right.
And they hit the absolute motherlode, the Tendaguru expedition.
And what do they find there?
They find tons of dinosaur material, including these nearly complete skeletons that look remarkably similar to what Riggs found in Colorado. A paleontologist named Werner Janensch studies them and decides, okay, these are close enough. And he names the African species Brachiosaurus branchi.
And because the African skeletons were so complete, I mean, you could build the whole thing in a museum, they become the model for what a Brachiosaurus is.
They became the default, the poster child. The original specimen in Chicago was kind of forgotten by the public because it was just a few bones. But the one in Berlin, that was a full standing skeleton.
So every movie, every toy, every poster was based on the African one.
For a century, yeah. But even then, there were some whispers in the paleontological community. Are these really the same animal?
And those whispers got a lot louder in 2009.
They became a shout. A researcher, Michael P. Taylor, did his own deep dive, and he realized, wait a minute, these aren't just different species, they're different genera.
How different are we talking?
He found 26 distinct anatomical differences, which is a lot. In fact, they were more different from each other than, say, Diplodocus and Barosaurus are. So the African one got a new name, Giraffatitan.
Giraffatitan. I love that name. It's very fitting.
It is.
So, okay, the star of Jurassic Park is technically a Giraffatitan. So what makes our original American Brachiosaurus altithorax different? If I put them side by side, what do I see?
Well, the American Brachiosaurus is the heavy-duty model. Its trunk, its torso is about 25 to 30% longer than Giraffatitan's.
So it's just bulkier, a
Yeah.
longer body.
Much bulkier,
Right.
longer, deeper. And the tail was probably 20, maybe 25% longer and taller at the base. But the biggest visual cue might be the stance.
The stance.
Yeah. Giraffatitan's front legs were pretty much vertical pillars, straight up and down. Brachiosaurus had arms that were slightly sprawled at the shoulder.
Sprawled. You mean like a bulldog?
A little bit, yeah. Not that extreme, but it gave it this wider, more robust posture. It was wider in the hips, wider in the shoulders. If Giraffatitan is a graceful giraffe, Brachiosaurus is a tank. A very, very tall tank.
And it's funny you say that because in the place they found it, the Morrison Formation out west Brachiosaurus is actually incredibly rare.
That's a huge point. If you were walking around in the Jurassic, you'd be tripping over a Camarasaurus or Diplodocus. They're everywhere in the fossil record. Spotting a Brachiosaurus would have been a really special event.
So we have this rare, massive, deep-chested, slightly sprawling American giant. Let's talk numbers. How big are we really talking?
The estimates do vary a bit, and that's mainly because the original specimen Riggs found probably wasn't even fully grown. It was a subadult.
It was still growing.
Yeah. But based on what we have, we're looking at an animal about 18 to 22 meters long, so up to 72 feet.
And the weight?
That's all over the place. The low end is around 28 tons. The high end is close to 47 tons. So let's say a safe bet is somewhere in the 40 to 50 ton range.
Okay, that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me. You can't just scale up a lizard to that size and expect it to work. Gravity becomes this huge enemy.
The square cube law. Right. Your volume and your weight increase way faster than your bone strength. So how did it not just collapse into a pile of goo?
Yeah.
The answer is air. Lots and lots of air.
And we're not just talking about big lungs here.
No, not at all. We're talking about a respiratory system that was incredibly similar to modern birds. They had this whole system of air sacs in the abdomen, in the chest, even running up the neck. And these didn't just help it breathe, they actually invaded the bones.
What do you mean, invaded the bones?
So vertebrae, the ribs, they were hollowed out by these air sacs. The technical term is pneumaticity. It's like building with carbon fiber instead of solid steel. It drastically cut down the weight of the skeleton without losing strength.
So if its bones were solid like ours, it would have been too heavy to even move.
It might have been too heavy to lift its own neck. Seriously. But this system did more than just lighten the load. It also gave it a supercharged engine.
How so?
Well, mammals like us, we breathe in, we breathe out. It's called bidirectional flow. You're always mixing fresh air with stale air. But sauropods, like birds, had unidirectional airflow.
So the air only moves in one direction through the lungs.
Exactly. It's a continuous loop. The air sacs act like bellows, constantly pumping fresh air across the lung tissue, whether the animal is inhaling or exhaling. It's incredibly efficient at extracting oxygen, which you absolutely need to fuel a body that big.
And to fuel a body that big, you need a high metabolism. For a long time, the thinking was that dinosaurs were cold-blooded, slow-moving lizards.
Yeah, that idea is long gone. The consensus now is that Brachiosaurus was homeothermic. It kept a stable internal temperature, and endothermic, or warm-blooded, it had to be, to grow that fast and move that actively.
But wouldn't it have the opposite problem? A 40-ton warm-blooded animal must have generated a crazy amount of internal heat.
It would have been like a biological furnace. And that's where those air sacs come in again. They likely worked as a cooling system, helping to radiate excess heat away from the body's core. And some theories suggest that big crest on its head also helped cool blood going to the brain.
Okay, let's go there. The neck. You can't talk about Brachiosaurus without talking about that neck. In all the movies, it's held high, almost vertical, like a swan. But I remember a while back, scientists were saying, no, they held their necks straight out horizontally.
Yes, the great neck posture debate. That was a 1999 study that argued the vertebrae weren't flexible enough to curve upwards like that. They said it would have broken its own back. It caused a huge stir, ruined a lot of museum displays.
I bet. Excuse me, sir, could you please lower your multi-million-dollar dinosaur display? So where are we now? Is it up or is it down?
The pendulum has swung back, thankfully. The current view is an inclined posture, maybe 60 to 70 degrees. So not a perfect vertical swan neck, but definitely high. They were specialized high browsers.
So they were eating leaves about 30 feet up in the air.
Exactly. It makes no sense to have front legs that long if you're just going to hold your head near the ground.
Okay, phew. But that brings us to a massive physics problem, the heart.
It's the ultimate plumbing challenge. To get blood from your chest all the way up to a brain that high, you're fighting an incredible amount of gravitational pressure.
A giraffe's heart is already huge, and its blood pressure is sky high compared to ours.
And this animal would need a heart that could generate maybe double the blood pressure of a giraffe's. We're talking about a heart that could have weighed 400 kilograms.
That's almost 900 pounds. The heart weighed as much as a piano.
Just to keep its brain from passing out. It was a cardiovascular marvel every single second of its life.
Okay, so let's picture this animal day to day. The old image was always the swamp thing, right?
Right. The 19th century idea was they were just too heavy for land, so they must have lived in the water to support all that weight. You see all those old paintings of them submerged in a swamp with their heads sticking out.
Which is funny because Riggs, the guy who discovered it, was calling that out back in 1904.
He was way ahead of his time. He pointed to the feet. They're compact, like an elephant's foot, built for solid ground, not splayed out for mud. He pointed to the deep, narrow chest and those hollow vertebrae. He knew it was a land animal from day one.
It just took science 50 years to catch up with him.
Pretty much.
So it's walking on land through these semi-arid fern savannas. What's it eating up there?
It's a high browser, so it's going for conifers, ginkgos, tree ferns, and its eating style was very efficient. It was all nip and swallow.
No chewing.
Zero chewing. Their teeth were like chisels just for stripping vegetation off a branch. They'd just swallow it all whole and let their enormous gut do all the hard work of fermentation.
It's basically a walking fermentation tank.
One that needed something like 200 to 400 kilograms of plants every single day.
That is a lot of ferns. Now, the Jurassic Park question. Could it rear up on its hind legs like in the movie?
Ah, another great myth to bust. While some sauropods, like Diplodocus, might have been able to rear up, Brachiosaurus was uniquely bad at it.
Why?
Remember that body shape? Long front legs, deep chest. Its center of mass was way too far forward. If it tried to rear up, it would have been incredibly unstable and would have probably just tipped over.
Plus, it was already 30 feet tall.
It didn't need to. It evolved the height so it wouldn't have to do the gymnastics.
Good point. Okay, let's talk about its face. The skull of Brachiosaurus is really distinctive. It has that huge crest right on top of its head.
A nasal bar, yeah.
Yeah.
It creates this big bony arch high up on the skull.
And for years, people said, aha, that's a snorkel.
Which ties right back into the swamp myth. The idea was its nostrils were on top of its head so it could hide underwater. But we know now that water pressure would have made it impossible to inflate its lungs at that depth.
But the hole in the skull's on top.
The bony opening is on top, yes. But in 2001, a researcher named Lawrence Whitmer did a great study. He looked at modern animals and found that the fleshy nostril, the part you actually breathe through, is almost always at the front of that bony opening.
So even though the hole in the skull is high up, the fleshy nostril tubes probably ran down its face.
Exactly. The nostrils you could actually see were probably low on the snout, near the mouth.
So what was the point of the big crest then, if it's not a snorkel mount?
That's the million-dollar question. Maybe a heightened sense of smell. Maybe it was a resonating chamber to make deep, booming calls that could travel for miles.
Or, like you said, a radiator for the brain.
Or a radiator for the brain. It was probably a combination of all those things.
I love the idea of them just rumbling to each other across the plains. Now, before we finish, we have to talk about the babies. Finding a baby sauropod has to be incredibly rare.
It's like finding a needle in a continent-sized haystack. But they did describe one, a juvenile specimen nicknamed Tony. It was only about 2 meters long.
So the size of a pony.
A pony, yeah. But a pony that was shaped very differently from its parents. This shows us they had allometric growth. They changed shape as they got bigger.
Like how a human baby has a giant head.
Exactly. Tony had a much shorter neck compared to its body than an adult did. Its arm bones were more robust. And the bones hadn't become fully hollowed out yet. That pneumaticity increased as they grew.
So they literally shapeshifted from this pony-sized, short-necked thing into a 40-ton, long-necked, hollow-boned giant.
And they did it incredibly fast. They probably hit sexual maturity when they were only at about 40% of their maximum size. They were just built to grow at an explosive rate.
Okay, let's bring this all together. We started with the movie Monster, and we've ended up with something that is, well, it's quite different.
It is. The real Brachiosaurus altithorax was a rare North American specialist. Not the slender, vertical-necked animal from Africa. It was beefier, deeper in the chest, with those slightly sprawled front limbs.
A warm-blooded, air sac-filled, land-walking biological machine that pumped blood 3 stories into the air and ate half a ton of food a day without chewing.
And it really shows us that getting the names right matters. By separating it from Giraffatitan, we get to appreciate Brachiosaurus for what it uniquely was.
It really makes you wonder if maybe the most famous dinosaur in cinema is actually a case of mistaken identity, an imposter. How many other prehistoric animals that we have in our heads are just wrong?
That is the problem with iconic images. They tend to stick, even long after the science has moved on.
Well, next time you're watching that 1993 classic, you could be that person on the couch who pushes up their glasses and says, actually, that's a Giraffatitan.
Just don't blame us if you don't get invited back for movie night.
Worth it for the accuracy. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Keep questioning the icons.
And keep looking for the real story that's in the bones.
See you next time.